Oh, snap!
The world is finally waking up to the crap that's baked into and sprayed on kibble dog food. No longer can commercial pet food manufacturers fool us with pretty pictures and false promises. This is the raw dog food truth. The view and opinions expressed on this podcast are not intended to replace medical advice. Before starting any raw diet, do research, ask lots of questions, and consult your vet.
Well, hello, raw feeders. I'm Dee Dee Mercer-Moffat, the CEO of Raw Dog Food and Company, where your pet's health is our business and we're friends. Don't let friends feed kibble. Well, how is everyone on this Tuesday? I hope you guys are doing fabulous. We are doing fabulous here, helping lots of pet parents. It's one of our passion. The things that we love the most is helping pet parents educate themselves so that they can help their pets be the best that they can be. And good golly, oh my, there is a lot of sphincter news out there. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful of what you read and what you hear, and then check it out further before you make some rash decisions. Okay. That's just, a little clue. Yes, I would suggest as we move into the fall that you find a way to have some extra food on hand. All right. I would always, look, if you have little dogs, it's going to be easy. If you have larger dogs, it's a little bit harder to store 3 to 6 months worth of food. But if you can, yes, I would definitely do it. All right. So we've been talking a lot about, can you afford to feed raw? And it's Tuesday. We're back to Brian's beef. Brian's got a beef about this. He says, can you afford to not feed raw? Okay. And you did hear in my last podcast some of the suggestions and ideas to help you afford to feed raw. But I think that Brian always comes at this from a great perspective and a great angle. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And here we go. Brian says, feeding your pets fresh food costs more than kibble. I mean, there is no way around that fact. There's no way to spin it. No fancy math that you can do. Real food will always cost more than processed cardboard. You are getting more, so you should expect to pay more. There is no comparison between fresh food and kibble because one is food and the other is feed. Now, if you could make it so you could feed your dog a raw diet for the same price as the giant bag of kibble from the grocery store, then there would be no need for kibble. Now, would there? Interesting. That's a good question, Brian. He says, feeding fresh cost more than kibble, but it is not expensive. At least no more expensive than it is to feed any member of your family real food. Dogs are family, are they not? I would say, Brian, that the people that listen to this podcast do believe that their animals are family. They're not just yard ornaments. So that's great. But Brian goes on to say, would you feed your children or your partner a completely inappropriate diet because it was cheap? Or would you budget and cut cost elsewhere to feed them what they should eat? He says, the first step to getting past the raw food is too expensive stage is understanding why kibble came about in the first place. I mean, kibble is not a better way to feed our pets. It's a convenient and cheap way to feed our pets. That's it. It is not species appropriate. It is not the only way dogs eat, and it's not healthy. Clever and deceptive marketing has convinced the world otherwise. But parroting a lie repeatedly for 60 years does not make it true. Marketers created kibble, not someone who cared about our pets and food. They sold the idea of kibble to executives as a way to dual purpose manufacturing equipment and processes and use the scraps and trash that would otherwise go to waste. And pet food manufacturers have been making fistfuls of cash ever since. But are our pets better off? Well, you know what I have to say about that, Brian? That question is just sphincter because that's just crap. Our pets are not better off. All right. Brian goes on to say, our dogs ate what we ate for thousands of years and did just fine. I'd argue that they did much better since cancer was virtually non-existent in dogs before the 1960s, and the average life expectancy of dog was much longer than it is today. Ronald Reagan famously asked the American people if they were better off today than 4 years ago. Are our dogs better off today with all this technology and convenience? Convenience kills, I might add. Brian goes on to say, I tire too of the too expensive argument. Gas is expensive, but we all find a way to pay for it because it's what our cars need. And there would be expensive consequences to trying to run our cars on something they are not designed to use. We do this because we know how expensive auto repair bills can be. Well, do you know what else is expensive? Treating your dog for cancer, trying to figure out why they itch and scratch, and cleaning and pulling bad teeth. That's expensive. I mean, what you feed or don't feed affects whether your dog has to deal with these issues. So let's look at the teeth, for example. An annual dental exam and cleaning costs between $250 and $900. These exams are needed because 75 to 85% of dogs have periodontal disease caused by plaque accumulation by the time they're 2 years of age. So the question is, where does that plaque come from in such a short time? Brian says 100% it's a result of eating kibble. Kibble has so little moisture that when it mixes with saliva, it forms these little sticky kibble balls. And because dog saliva lacks amylase and no digestion of carbohydrates and sugars occur in the mouth, these little balls of kibble stay on the teeth, resulting in tartar building on the dog's teeth and gum line. And you know this feeling. If you've ever eaten a bunch of cookies or chips and felt all that stickiness in your teeth. So if you're spending $900 per year on their teeth, is the $40 you spend a month on their food an accurate representation of what it costs to feed your dog? And that's just one example of how expensive dealing with the fallout from feeding a species-appropriate food can be. A kibble-fed dog is not going to just have bad teeth. They'll likely be obese, they'll itch, have GI issues, and skin and coat issues, requiring you to spend more money at your vet. And God forbid that your dog gets cancer or another severe illness. The cost of a fresh food diet will seem like a bargain next to the tens of thousands of dollars it will cost to treat cancer. You're not just spending $40 a month on food. If you also spend $250 a month on vet bills or prescriptions that are a direct result of what you're feeding. You can narrow-mindedly consider feeding your dog a raw diet as expensive. But how much else are you spending on your pet because of the food you're feeding? I promise you, a species-appropriate diet costs less than those two things combined. Raw food is not expensive. The alternative is. And the alternative also can result in less time with your dogs. And for me, time with my dogs is priceless. Brian adds a disclaimer here. And he says, feeding a raw diet does not guarantee that your dog will be free of illness. Genetics is a factor, as are all the toxins all creatures, including us, are subjected to daily. The goal is to stack the odds in your dog's favor and allow them to thrive. Additionally, a dog fed a species appropriate diet will have a more robust immune system, better equipped to fight an illness should one come along. There it is. I love that. You know, at the bottom, he says, many pet parents think they cannot afford to feed their pets a fresh food diet. He said, but the better question is whether they can afford not to. So there it is. I mean, I think that you do have to take all of that into consideration. You really do have to do what Dr. Andy said, put pen to paper. Look at, if you're feeding kibble, you are going to have many of those problems that Brian talked about. And then you're going to go to your vet and you're going to need to get on some allergy medication, and that costs money and that wears off. And then you've got to do some more powerful, or you've got to do bigger doses. So you got to spend more money, and the dog becomes more toxic because of those things. So now you're in a catch-22. So I get it. I get it that people think that a species appropriate diet is expensive, and it is going to be more expensive than cardboard, because that's really what kibble is. It by the time it comes out of the extrusion and the high heat, it's basically cardboard. That's why they have to spray it with all of the synthetic vitamins and minerals. And you know what we see on a constant basis is loose, sloppy poops from the kibble diets. And the people that feed kibble seem to be okay with these near diarrhea poops. We're not okay with that. That clearly indicates that your dog's not getting any nutrition, and they are probably starving because they're just not getting the nutrition that they really need. So get over to rawdogfoodandcompany.com and we can help you. We can help you get on a species appropriate diet. The first thing that you want to do is look at your dog and figure out how much they should weigh. If they are chunky, then how much should they weigh to be at their best? You take that number, you go over to our feeding chart, pop that number in. There's an adult chart and there's a puppy chart. And that'll tell you how many ounces you are going to feed your dog a day. Now, I always say this, your feeding charts are a starting point. If after a couple of weeks, your dog is looking too skinny and you want to bump it up by a few ounces. If your dog is still too heavy, we may need to bump it down. We can also look at fat, but fat is not a huge culprit. People ask me about calories all the time. I haven't looked at calories ever. You know what calories basically are telling you is just how much fat is in the food. And in our food, there's really only 2 calories, fat and protein. Okay, fat and protein. So you can take a look at that, but we can help you. And so if you want to know how much your dog is going to eat a month and how much that's going to cost you, this is how you figure that out. Once you get that number in the feeding chart, it pops out, let's say 24 ounces a day. We'll just take 24, multiply that times 30. Multiply that times 30 days. Some months have 31, but let's just go with that. 24 times 30. That's going to return a number of 720. Now, that's not really helpful until I change that into pounds. So what you want to do is divide that by 16, because 16 ounces is a pound. That's going to return how many pounds that particular dog is going to need a month. And that comes out to about 45 pounds. 45 pounds. Now you say, well, how much is 45 pounds? Well, I would say take that, and a really good number is take that times 5. Okay. That turns out to be $225. Okay. $225 to feed your dog a species appropriate diet. And if that sounds like a lot because you've been paying, $160 for a bag of kibble, well, what else are you adding? You're probably adding in some supplements. You're probably adding in vet visits. You're probably adding in teeth cleanings. You're probably adding in a lot of things that you wouldn't be adding in if you were on a species appropriate diet. So we got to get real clear on what that number is. Now, if you want to know how much that is to feed your dog a day, that's about $7.50. $7.50. And I will tell you that a venti latte with oat milk with a double shot is or one shot is more than $7.50 a day. It is. And let's say that you could cut that in half. Maybe you go to Starbucks every day, so you go to Starbucks every other day, right? There's a lot of things. You can say, well, I don't go to Starbucks. Well, there's a lot of things that you probably do that you could live without. But can you live without your dog? I'm very serious when I say that, because you can't imagine the dogs that we know, that we see, that we help, or that we hear about that are getting cancer. Younger and younger and younger. Something going on out there, people. All right. Get over to rawdogfoodandcompany.com. You can send us information that you would like discussed here on the podcast through our chat. You can certainly email us at info@rawdogfoodandcompany.com. You do have to spell it and. It's not the and sign. rawdogfoodandcompany.com. We want to thank Brian for all of his Brian's beefs. And I will hopefully get Brian on the podcast in the live soon. All right, everybody, get over to rawdogfoodandcompany.com, where your pet's health is our business and we're friends. Don't let friends feed kibble. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Oh, snap.
Find out how you can start your dog on the road to health and longevity. Go to rawdogfoodandcompany.com, where friends don't let friends feed kibble, and where your pet's health is our business.
Just snap.